Hello everyone, Dr. Mohon-Doyle here. Today's video lecture will briefly discuss writing the script for the PowerPoint presentation and how to create an effective PowerPoint that looks professional and holds the viewer's attention. The purpose of a PowerPoint presentation is to demonstrate your understanding of the material and share it with your classmates. We are doing this through what is called remediation, taking information from one form of media, like an article, and turning it into another form of media, like a PowerPoint. The act of changing media forces you to think about what kind of information will work best in the new media and how it may need to be reinterpreted through things like pictures. The first step in preparing a PowerPoint presentation is to write your script. Your script will have two major sections, the summary of your article and your response to it. This script will help guide you as you make the PowerPoint. The script should cover all major points made in the article in a summary, a condensed version of the information in your own words. That means that you can't just copy-paste whole sections of the article to a Word doc and call it a day. Last week, you chose your article, read through it carefully, and wrote annotations in preparation for turning that information into your script. Your job now is to rewrite the important information you identified so it flows together well and makes sense to an audience who has never read the article before. First, it can be helpful if you provide a quick overview of the main argument or topic of the article. This can give your audience some context to understand the rest of your presentation. Then, chunk the information into the major points. Since you need at least 3 slides for this section, you'll need to identify at least 3 major points that you will explain. Once you have the summary of each point in your own words, you can go back and incorporate an interesting quote or important example from the article to illustrate the main points. Given the time requirement for this assignment, 1 to 2 brief paragraphs per point or slide should be enough. However, you will want to time how long it takes you to read it. Once you've discussed the article, it's time to offer your response to it. The response usually takes the form of agreement or disagreement with the main points of the article. Keep in mind that it is possible to agree with some points and not with others. In either case, you'll want to evaluate the ideas presented by the author and explain your stance. Your response can also expand on the conversation started in the article by adding an example or pointing out an element they left out. A good response demonstrates a direct connection to the original article. An even better response uses personal experience and connections you see to previous readings to help support your reactions. Here is a good place to include the required references to at least 2 of the readings and videos from the class. Remember, you need at least 2 slides for this section, so your script will need to break your response down into 2 major points that you want to make. Once you've solidified your script and mapped it out into slides, you need to create a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with it. Your PowerPoint should be at least 7 slides. The title slide should include the title of your article, the author's name, your name, the date, and the URL link to the article. I will show you an example in the next slide of what this should look like. As I mentioned previously, there should be at least 3 summary slides and 2 response slides. You will also need a slide that includes your questions for your classmates to consider. This can serve as your closing slide. Your slide should also include relevant images to make it more interesting for the viewer. So here is an example of what the title slide could look like. Depending on the PowerPoint design you go with, this information may be in slightly different locations, but you'll include all of these elements. All right, now let's consider slide design. When you create your slides, you need to pay careful attention to the design and style you use. The first thing to remember when it comes to text is less is more. You should not have large paragraphs or long sentences on your slide. It's okay to include a full quote from the article. In fact, the slide could just be a quote. However, general information should be kept to bullet points. The slides are just visual aids to help your audience follow along with your talk. Most of your information should be in the script that you read over the slide and your notes underneath, similar to what I'm doing right now. You need to make thoughtful decisions not only about what information to include on the slides, but about how that information should look. The text should be easy to read. That means you want to avoid overly elaborate script-style fonts, and you need to ensure that the font size is large enough to be read by people sitting at different distances from their screen. Make sure that people in the back can see it. When choosing colors for your fonts, there are a few rules for readability. The bright green on bright red is great for Christmas, but makes our eyes hurt when it's on a screen. Choose colors that are contrasting colors so they can stand out against each other. If they're too close in color, we can't really see them. Thin white letters on black background, particularly large paragraphs of this, can cause eye strain. You should include visual elements like pictures or a graph from your article to make your information easy to understand and your PowerPoint interesting to look at. If you want to include a picture, make sure that the image is relevant to the topic and that it matches the tone. In other words, if you are presenting a serious article on a scientific innovation, you'd want to use a picture of a scientist or lab instead of the cartoon bee with a magnifying glass. If you want the class to focus on a single image that serves as an example while you explain information from the article in your talk, you can have a slide that is just that image. You don't always have to have accompanying text. Keep the number of visuals on a slide to a minimum. Too many visuals can feel crowded or make parts of the images too small to see. PowerPoint has optional graphics that you can use, including transition animations, music, and click to view text. Personally, I don't really like to use these. They can be distracting if not done well, and it's really easy to do them poorly. If you do choose to use them, keep it to a minimum, only one or two to be consistent from slide to slide. If one slide comes in from the top, all the other slides should come in from the top. Also, it's a good idea to make graphics automatic, particularly when you are actually presenting in front of an audience. When people present, they get nervous. If they have to remember to click in order to get every bullet point to show on the screen, they are going to forget. Just like I did. Even when you are just recording alone, you can still feel nervous, and adding extra steps can lead to a longer recording time. Again, less is more. Keep your slideshow style fairly simple. Use one of the basic slideshow templates and avoid overly flashy backgrounds like you see here. If you do go with a non-standard slide background, check what's actually in it. I had a student who presented to the class with a background that had a series of hand gestures at the bottom, and in the very middle was a hand giving the middle finger. She flipped us off the entire presentation, and that is the only thing I remember about her. In addition to standardizing your background, standardize your font, color, and positioning of elements on your slides. This should feel like one slideshow, not a Frankenstein of a bunch of different presentations. It's also a good idea to limit the number of slides. For this presentation, you need at least 7. You probably shouldn't go over 10. Here is a quick reminder of what elements must be included in the final PowerPoint presentation. Note, you also need to include at least 3 key words and their definitions somewhere in this PowerPoint. You can add a glossary slide at the beginning before the summary, which will bring you to 8 slides. Alternatively, you can include the glossary terms at the bottom of the relevant summary slides where you use them. I think this is probably the smoothest and most helpful option. If you have any questions about this assignment, please contact me at Mohon-Doyle K@apsu.edu.